Okay, guys, this is a little addendum to the first series on hooking up your and installing your E3D to your Stinger. Okay, so we got the Stinger is installed already. That's covered in the first part of the video, but I did part of it where I disassembled this because I had my my V6 assembly was already soldered in to my wires here, and I thought the best way to do it, rather than nip the wires and resolder, was to take this apart. But I realized some of the guys took it apart and they went a little too far with it, and they had some difficulties. So we're going to run this past you with the let's call it the normal way of doing it, so you don't have to disassemble your Stinger. So we're just going to unpack. I've got a rep wrap clone here. We'll just pull that out, set that aside. We don't need this. I've had one already installed on here, so we already have the Bowden tube wires are run and everything, but I think this is probably the best way to clarify. I'll go through the actual physical assembly of this, and then I'm not going to waste your time soldering. You know, going through soldering. I don't need to teach anybody how to solder, and you don't want to sit through a boring soldering session here. So we're just going to basically assemble the E3D. I'm straightening out the wires here so we don't get a big tangled mess in them. And we'll put this together. I'm also going to, I'm going to take the old one here that I'm taking off. I'm just retiring it. It's pretty old, and I'm having some, I think I'm having thermistor issues with this one, so rather than play around, every time I try to take one of these thermistors out, I ruin it. So I'm going to keep this as a spare. Order a thermistor, replace it, and then I'll always have this as a spare. But these things are cheap enough. Keep one around for a spare anyway. That's basically what this one is here. Alright, so when installing these, I'm going to pull this fan off here. I was told that you got to kind of watch it, that heat break is fragile on these, so I wasn't pushing up against here while I was disassembling the fan. We're just going to take the heat break right off. Just going to take this right out of here, and I've been told it's best to, when they machine these, they get in such a hurry. They want to come in and do this really cheap, so what they do is they machine these, and sometimes they don't clean them out good. This is looking awfully nice here. I want to make sure we can see right down through that tiny little nozzle, and I'm seeing light through there. So, could take it out in the shop and put some compressed air to it, but I think we're good here. I think this is good. So, let's go ahead and we'll do our quick assembly. And we'll just watch which way the wires go here so we break it. Everybody sees that. We'll break this, in other words, bend it on a sharp point. That's what the word break means. Don't literally break it. And we'll look where that thermistor is over here. So, okay, we're going to point where the thermistor comes out of the wiring harness. We're just going to point it over here. And at the same time, we want to get the wires where they come flat out of here. What I mean by that is the two wires are right and left over here in a relatively flat, because when we bend it, we don't want to bend the radius of this wire over this one. It'll make this radius way too big and it won't fit where we're going to try to put this. So I'm going to pull the thermistor out of the way, the thermistor wire. We want to give it just a little bit of slack there. I'm not going to clamp this in yet. We're just using that as an edge to break this over right here. So we're going to break this. Got a nice 90-degree angle on it right there. And I'm going to clamp this in kind of loose. If you ever want to do any service on this, you want to put a anti-seize, what they call an anti-seize compound on here. What that does is it keeps the threads from locking. Very important when you're using aluminum on anything. And I'm going to do this so this doesn't get in our way. I'm just going to take the old wires. I'm going to get my length on that. So I'm just going to take that length. That way we're not dealing with a big rat's nest of wires. There we go. We can get rid of this now. Okay. I've got a product here. Loctite makes it, and you can see it's kind of faded. It's been around for a long time. This stuff lasts a long time. Silver grade anti-seize quick stick, it's called. I don't even know if it sells under the same product name, but like I say, I don't use much of it. When you use it, you don't use much. So we're going to just dab a little bit on that screw. And here's kind of how I do it. Both of these clamping screws, the one for the thermistor and the one for the clamp on the main heater. I'm just going to pull this out of here, and I just take it along the edge of it and just get it on the threads, kind of roll it around. Alright, so we got a nice little coating of that on there. I'm going to just screw that in. Okay, that coats the inside of the aluminum. Over here, we'll do the same thing over here. These are little handy things to know when you've been in the business for a long time. You get some of these little tricks. We'll just go ahead and we'll get it. Nice little protective layer. So let's go ahead and we'll stick that in there. Okay, a nice little coating of that on there. Alright, now we're going to pay attention to the nozzle. We know on these, the nozzle will be in the front, over here toward the front. The heater block comes off the back of it, so you know which direction to go. As you can see, we're kind of hold it in the perspective of how it goes on. So we're looking at the left, it's coming out of the left side with the block facing back. Okay, block facing back, left side, right over here. Let's go ahead and tighten that down. We're gonna snug it down. It's got to go quite a ways because there's a pretty large crack in here, and it pulls that crack down. And what we're trying to do is kind of feel as we're tightening it down. We want to still be able to move this slightly. So I'm going to back off on this just a little bit. Okay, we can still move that a little. Just a little more. There we go. We got friction there, and that'll help us arrange everything while we're doing our thermistor in there, and it'll support this, so we're not yanking it around. And I guess the way we're going to attempt to do this, yeah, let's put that wire right there. Do everything real carefully. This is kind of a tender little spot here. I use my size of this Allen is about the size of the shaft on the screw, or the shank on the screw. So if you want to just get your Allen wrench in there, kind of do one of these things. Just kind of pull that out so you can get that around the screw. Okay, goes around the screw, and we're just kind of making a little home for it there. We'll actually, now we'll tick it over to about 4 o'clock where that goes. I'm winding that with my fingernail. There's a pretty heavy duty silicone around these wires, but you don't want to go through, you don't want to tension the wire down hard enough that the silicone, you bust through it. So now what we're going to do, I'm going to take this off here. Our wire is basically conditioned for that little hole that goes in there. I'm going to bend that down. Be kind of careful when we do that. If you don't have a pair of these things, these are really nice. Any little Chinese fasteners or anything you have, they really work well with it. Okay, we're just going to put a little 90. I didn't squeeze on that. We're just trying to fish it down this little hole right here. You see that? We got it down inside that hole. Okay. We got this little opening for our screw to go down. I'm actually going to use these to kind of part the spot where the screw goes down. Okay. Everybody see that? Your thermistor's down in there. Yeah, and that makes a nice little way for your screw to go in. And you know, if your screw doesn't catch both sides of that, not a big deal. You want to catch one side of that wire. What you're trying to do is hold that thermistor down in there as stable as possible, and you don't want to over tension that screw and pierce. You don't want to pierce through that silicone covering in the wire. So we're going to just guide it in. We're not in a big rush. Okay. See, we got a nice, neat little thing going on there. And I can feel the kind of the springiness of the silicone behind there, and I got a little bit of tension on it. This is like a little one finger thing. You don't need to tighten it down. That's it. Just like that. Now, we're going to work on this guy. Pay attention you don't disturb the silicone now. And we want this to be about as far as it is. You see we're kind of splitting the difference on the length of the heater. Kind of want to keep that trajectory going. If I go too far with this, I'm going to disturb that silicone. So I'm watching the tension I'm putting on the silicone wire. Okay. Pretty good right there. Now, if you think about how much tension do you want to have to put on this when you remove it, that'll help you gauge how much tension you want to put on it when you're putting it together. That's about as much as I need. You see that crack is almost together. You could pull it together further, but it's not really going to do anything except make it really difficult to take out. So, okay, we're running the wires about parallel with that. This is a good time to strip your wires back. Got a neat little strippers here. We'll go fetch that quick. Okay, we're going to strip these back quick, and probably a little like 3/16 of an inch maybe. A little less on the smaller wires, but not quite as much. Okay, that's good. We're going to now. This would be a good time to fit our either Kapton tape insulation around this block, okay, and some tape. I've got the little socks, the E3D socks that fit on them. I like those because if you have a problem, you can remove it quick while it's still on the stinger. And E3D makes these, and they're very inexpensive. You buy them by the three. I think there's a 3-pack. One thing I found, the E3D's heat blocks are a different size than the E3D clone blocks. So what you're going to find is everything seems to line up real good here. The tip lines up. See the nozzle lines up on the tip? You're going to find about 1/8 of an inch of space in the front right here. And what I do is I'll cut a little piece of metal and I stick it in there as an insulator. You can do that, you can get away without it. It's really, the reason I do that is because it holds where the nozzle comes out. It kind of holds that, where that is. I also like to take and just cut that a little bit, because if that happens to slip down a little bit, you are going to have some issues there. So this is what I do. Just the messenger. I'm just telling you what I do. Don't shoot the messenger. I'm sure there's better things to cut them with, but boom, that's it. So you got a nice little spot there. That also will identify, I've had it already where the tip started leaking around the threads here. And it just made a little bulge in here, and I couldn't tell it was leaking. This became full of PLA before I caught it. And I really had a mess, and it was beyond repair. So, rule of thumb, you always want a little space underneath your tip here. So while we got it out, this is the best time to work on it. And we want to stay away from that thermistor. Okay, we got a little grip on this. That's a good case for an adjustable wrench right there. So we're going to just loosen the tip, okay? Got the tip loosened down. We are going to now install it. Get this guy out of the way. Let's install this. Proper way to install this is to bring the heat brake all the way down. All the way down into there. Okay. And we got a little space under the tip. That gives a little bit of space where you can tighten it. Okay, I'm going to hand tighten this in here against the block. You could probably do that with the wrench too. I'm always afraid of, I've already bent a couple of these heat brakes, so I'm a little paranoid about that. And then I guess the next step here, you just want to hang on to the heat brake. Give that nozzle a good, I've already broke these too. This keeps them from leaking though, if you get a good, okay. I'm pretty satisfied with the tension on that. Probably sticks out a little further than it should, but that's a good case for this thing. Now it will stick out of the hole more. You can see that where we've got, you can really see your tip well on this with this wrapped around here. So you don't want to use a tie wrap. This gets so hot it'll melt plastic. I'm gonna get my little aluminum shim that I keep around for these guys. Okay, and then I wire this. Let's use a little piece of tie wire, same stuff as this. Okay. So I'd suggest going back behind these wires. This is where you want to start. Pull the wires out just a little bit. Okay, you see that? You're gonna come around. I like to leave the tie where you put the wires together. I like to leave that in the front. Should you ever have to take this off to do a quick repair, this is nice because you can unscrew it, and you can deal with it later. You can go ahead and put the wire back later. You can thread it through here, but this is a nice time to do that. So we're gonna go ahead. You see the left is crossed over the right, so we have to go to the left here. Just twist it around once. We'll break that off if we keep going on it. We pretty much fastened this. This is all one piece. Everything's good here. Okay, everybody see that we're not on the heater. Everything's pulled up against the bottom of it. I like this method. This is a good way to do this. Now, if you really want to get eat freak on this thing or not cut your fingers, nip these little ends off here. There you go. Okay, up through the hole. Let me just twist these together for now. And these all go up through the hole. You can also, if you have your heater already in there, I'm sorry, if you have your the hot ends in there, and you're installing it from the bottom up, let's say you're putting a new heater or new, you can go through this. We made this hole big enough for the heater and all the wires and thermistor to fit through. So you can go ahead and run it through the other way if you want. This is probably the best way to do it. This is our keeper assembly. Alright. So we're going to go ahead and assemble this. I've got some of these made of aluminum on the way. I will be offering as an upgrade. We call these keepers. And that's a real nice thing. Anybody that's doing real high temp stuff will want to look into that. Okay, so we got our wires here. You just bend them over. That'll kind of hold everything in here while you're straightening this up. You can look right down and you see your holes are exposed in there. Take your keeper ring, goes on top. Line the screws up. Make sure your split is in the middle here. You can hand thread these down. Well, you can also solder before you get to this point. Once you stick that in there, you can also solder it. It really doesn't seem to matter which sequence you do it in. If everybody can see that. Feel those threads grabbing now. You don't want to tighten this too tight. Those are plastic threads, and they don't have to be real tight. The tolerances are pretty close on these things. So, in all actuality, what this is supposed to do is just hold this from wobbling right here. So, as soon as you get it down to the point where you don't have that wobble in there, you're good. You're absolutely good. And once more, the metal ones are on the way. Anybody that's interested. Oh yeah, you can actually put quite a bit of torque on these. Threads are really deep in there, so man, that's like a rock. Like a rock. Okay. All right. The rest of this is soldering wires, installing the fan. We could probably do that right now. We want to just make sure you've got enough. This is pretty tight, but you can still rotate this a little bit. That's actually a good thing. And we're going to snap this on. Always back it up when you're snapping it. You back that up. Your fan is on. You're ready to go. You're ready to go. We're going to leave ourselves just a little extra wire here. Cut this off. These will get... okay. And one last little reminder. Don't forget to put your shrink wrap onto the wires before you solder them together. It's really a pain if you find out you didn't do that, and you have to later on get such a nice soldering job and later on come back and have to do it again. Okay, that's it, guys. I'll show you when it's all done. The final assembly. We'll assemble the and set the distance on your switch here also. So we'll be back soon. Let me get this thing soldered up. Okay, we just finished soldering up the wires, and I just thought I'd show you this part. Assembling the fangs and everything is a pretty easy thing to do. I don't think I need to go through that again. But I just wanted to show you a simple little tip here for adjusting your. You got about 1.5 millimeters here. You see in another video that I do an offset on this, and this is basically kind of the offset of what you'll end up with. This is 1.5 millimeters. If you stick this in between where the stinger makes contact, right there. Now I'm not on the button. The button is in between the two wrench pieces here. Your stinger will go 1 millimeter probably before it touches the button, and then the rest of it will be taken up in depressing the button and activating the button. We like to stay under 3 millimeters with that if we can. So this gives us a pretty good. This gives us a pretty good gauge of what that is. Now, the reason I'm using this wrench is because if you use this wrench every time, if you reset your stinger, or if you take this apart or anything on your stinger, if you use that same wrench, like a feeler gauge, chances are you may not have to set your offset, which is not a real big deal anyway, but it's kind of nice to know that you're setting this distance, and if you do this next time, you're going to end up with that same offset. So just kind of a neat little trick there. And these don't have to be real tight. Okay, and we got a little bit of slack in there. Let's just check, see what we got. Yeah, we're a little far. I'm going to try that again. I'm going to get just a little bit closer. You know, every time you do something like this, it gets a little easier. You understand it a little bit more. You just get to be a pro at it. Okay, I'm pushing down on this now. Let's feel this, okay? This feels pretty good. So basically you're setting this not to any particular distance, but you're setting it because you'll get back to the same spot every time if you do it like this. So it got a little bit light on me, but we'll see what we get once we do the offset on this thing. And that'll be a number you can use over and over again when you're doing your offset. You won't even have to get to that part of the screen. We just set the M851 space Z and then that number. And once we establish what that number is, you just keep using that number over and over again, and you get really close with that. Or you could just, you know, do the paper touch if you want. But that's a neat little trick. I just thought I'd show you that. And we're putting our stingers back, our bangs back on. Don't forget to hook this up, because you'll crash into the bed. Some guy in China will see your other end of your stinger poking up through the ground there. If you don't do that, it'll just keep going. So make sure that's plugged in. And snap. And there you go, making your connection. So hope everybody got something out of this. If you have any questions, once again, technical at 3dprint2form.com. My name is Dave Aschenbrenner, and if you have any questions, please contact me. Thank you.